from Drive and Thrive, where we're hauling freight across the 48. Now, I don't know about you, but I've definitely been seeing the price of gas skyrocket and shoot up. And of course, if regular gasoline prices are going up, diesel is going up as well. Now, in today's video, we're going to discuss how those charges or those prices can affect, well, basically do affect truck drivers as well as consumers out here in this market. And as a consumer, you're probably wondering, how in the world does the price of, diesel have to affect me as a person who just goes out and gets gasoline at the fuel pump? Well, my good friend, that price of diesel might affect you way more than you actually would think it does. Now, in order for me to explain how this can affect consumers every single day, I would have to explain what's called a fuel surcharge. Now, what the hell is a fuel surcharge, and what the hell does that got to do with everyday consumers? A fuel surcharge is an additional fee added to freight shipments when the cost of fuel exceeds the current average. Now, what in the heck does that all mean? Well, my good friend, that just basically means that there is a fee on top of, well, let's just say that the carrier charges a certain amount, thousands of dollars, in order for them to ship the freight to the receiver. Now, of course, it's going to cost the driver, the owner-operator, the lease operator more money in gas, especially since diesel has risen up so much in order for them to drive or transport the shipment from one place to another. So, of course, to kind of help offset that amount or that cost, the shipper would have to pay an additional fee or the surcharge in order for them to be able to cover more or a good bit of the diesel fuel that the driver will have to pay for in order to ship the items. Now, how might this fee affect consumers? Now, let me explain this. So basically, if the shipper has to pay more than the amount that it costs to ship the freight, because they have to account for the rise and fall of the gas prices, because they don't stay the same, of course, it would have to cost them more. And so, in a way to kind of get that money back, they would charge more for the product once the product hits the shelf. Now, there are many different reasons for the inflation of cost of everyday items as we're seeing now. But another reason for the rise in everyday goods and some of the everyday goods is because of that fuel surcharge. Now, how else is the shipper going to get that money back for sending those supplies to the receiver? That's right, it's coming out of your pocket whenever you go and buy a certain item. For example, if you buy bread and you notice that bread has gone up $1 or $1.50 or $2, it could be, or some of that cost could be, because of those fuel surcharges that shipper or that distribution center has to pay in order for the driver to transport the freight. Now, you might be thinking in your head, is this the fault of that truck driver who decides to charge the shipper more for gas? And I say no, because you have to think about the fact that, they're using your own trucks, they're using their own materials, they're using their own gas in order for you, the consumer, to be able to get the supplies that you need. So wouldn't it make sense that on top of, the manpower and everything else that goes into that freight cost, gas should be put in there too? Now, when I say gas, I do mean diesel. And of course, in the beginning of this video, I did say that diesel prices have gone up. So you also have to think about the fact that anytime when we're talking about these fuel surcharge or the fee that is placed on top of how much it's going to take to transport the freight, you also have to think about the fact that sometimes the fuel surcharge is not keeping up with the average amount of gas, or like the average cost of the gas per se, that is currently on the market. And so sometimes they're not, with the fuel surcharge, they're not paying enough or they could be paying too much. But in this case, since the cost of prices have gone up, they might not be able to keep up with the current prices of diesel at this time. And that's because fuel surcharges are not immediate, because the market or the price of gas or the price of diesel tends to fluctuate. So they just have to go off of that average, and it changes every so often. So they could be they could pay a good amount of the fuel, like how much the fuel costs. But for the most part, I would say that because the prices have gone up and they keep going up, they might still fall behind when it comes to covering that fee, and they might not be covering all of the costs that driver is going to have to incur when it comes to fueling their vehicle at the pump every single time they're on the road. Now, if you're a consumer, you also have to remember that there are some drivers that are still paying completely out of pocket for the diesel that they put into their trucks. So there are some people there are some drivers that end up getting a fuel surcharge, while there's still others that don't, because they don't understand what fuel surcharge is. Now, if you're a driver that wants to understand more about how fuel surcharge works, or if you're a consumer who's just curious about how the whole ordeal goes or how it, presents itself, then like, share, and subscribe for more. All right, bye.